All right, YouTube, the arms embargo on Vietnam has been lifted, and all I can say is hip hip hooray, it's about time. The idea that because we were at war in Vietnam at one point decades ago that we can't have amicable relations now has always been a little bit strange, sort of like Cuba. It's one of these sort of mid-Cold War era countries. We had a spat with them, we slapped an embargo on them, and talked shit about things, and in both cases tried to overthrow, a government. In Vietnam, of course, we were doing that on behalf of a democratic government. In Cuba, not so much. They just all supported socialism, I guess. Yeah, the time has ended to perturb these countries that were part of that infamous idea of dominoes falling. One country falls to communism, they all fall to communism. Soon all of Asia will be a giant blob of communists, and it never happened. The DPRK is still basically a communist state. China's a mixed model. They have a communist party, but they're not really feeling the communism. They've sort of moved closer to just a mediocre interventionist system. It doesn't work any better. It's like a step below what we're using, which is interventionist also. In Vietnam, that's basically the same thing. Vietnam now has a military alliance with Australia. It's not a hostile state towards the United States. It is an authoritarian nation, certainly. There's still a communist party there. There's still censorship. It's still essentially a police state. But it's much more low-key than it was, and it's beginning to advance away from that. It's beginning to embrace more westernized values. Now, there's more trade going on. Militarily, one of the reasons I think for this is China has perturbed the Vietnamese quite a bit, offering them a solution to have it. They've had to deal with China for so long because of fear of the West, that they had this sort of weird love-hate relationship whereby on the one hand it's a major trading partner, on the other hand the Chinese keep trying to bully around your fishing ships. They keep talking about, well, maybe the border shouldn't be quite where it is, maybe it should be a few more miles south, maybe we should do this, and so forth, claiming their territorial waters and so forth. But the Chinese are the arbiters of their own misfortune here. What they've done is they've taken states that were kind of friendly towards them, and they really pissed them off. They're pissing off India. They're pissing off Vietnam. They've pissed off Taiwan forever. And so what ends up happening is the United States now is offering an olive branch to the Vietnamese, saying, hey, buy our weapons. Trade with us. Fuck the Chinese. Who gives a damn about them? Much as we have done repeatedly with some of these countries down here. Kerry has been in India a large number of times. Why do you think he's been in India so much? He's trying to grab him away from the Eastern sphere, and he'll probably be successful. If that's the only thing he does, he'll still be 10 times better than Hillary Clinton was as a Secretary of State, by the way. Not presidential material, but a decent Secretary of State in most aspects, anyway, as far as diplomacy goes, except in the Middle East, I suppose. Essentially, though, Vietnam, it's not a hostile state. They're more worried at this point, I think, about Chinese incursions than the United States suddenly invading them again, saying, oh, no more communism for you. It's just not going to happen. This is a state that's rapidly developing. They've got a lot to offer the world economy. And they're a nice people, honestly. They keep releasing these slews of polls every year about what people think of the West or America or freedom or whatever. The Vietnamese are always up there near the Philippines as far as tolerating and liking American values and thinking the United States is pretty good. It's some good stuff. I don't have any negativity towards the Vietnamese just because our two states were in a war decades ago. Who cares? They've got good food. They've got a cool culture. It's an important ally, an important trading partner. Yeah, we should lift the arms embargo, sell them weapons. Then they won't have to buy them from the Chinese. Some of these states, they buy from Russia or China. We should really be making inroads into all of these states to try to supplant both countries collectively. In terms of arms sales. Not that I'm advocating gearing up for war, but it's a lucrative business. I think that the government should stop using no-bid contracts to produce military goods that we then sell at a high price. We could outcompete the Russians and Chinese handily if we did that. But I suppose this is a good start. There's a lot of tourism. A lot of tourists from the United States go to Vietnam. Vietnamese people come here and they establish businesses and so forth. I never saw this as a problem. who cares? So what if they have a communist party? We should be trading with them anyway. The best way to defeat communism anyway was always with money, not with bullets. We successfully did that in several cases. Some of these, look at China. China, communist, authoritarian, Maoist state. We're going to purge this group of people and resettle this piece of land, and we're going to build a dam here, and pretty soon we'll supplant the West. It didn't work. Now they're sort of westernizing. People have more and more demand for Western goods, to the point where the Chinese sort of communist authority there is having problems playing the delicate balancing act of retaining some trappings of state control, while at the same time not ending up with the masses revolting because they have to force them to become more insular. They're opening up over time out of necessity. And that's, over 1 billion people. It's going to be rather difficult to put down a rebellion in a state like China. So Vietnam, ending of the arms embargo there so that we can sell them rifles or whatever, good. It's good to bring them into the world at large. I mean, they were already trading with most of our allies anyway. It's just the United States kept holding out. It's like with Cuba. People from Europe traveled there all the time. People from the United States did too. They'd take a plane to Mexico, then they'd fly over to Cuba, and they had no problem with it. And you don't have many of these sort of horrific tales of, oh, well, I went to Cuba and they detained me for a month because they thought I was a spy, or I got beaten up on the street. It just doesn't happen. People in these places are peace-loving. They want to be left alone, and the only lingering sentiment of hostility really is, well, the United States still has some sort of weird embargo on us for something that happened 40, 50, 60 years ago. It's just not necessary. It doesn't work. We should be drawing them in by luring them into trade rather than trying to force people out of the world market. It's not like the Europeans are going to listen to us anyway. We've got a bigger economy, though. We can do that sort of brute work to get somebody into the world economy. By the way, the only aspect of globalism that actually does make sense is world trade. Everything else is bullcrap. World trade works. It helps to prevent hostilities. Yeah, I want to see some Vietnamese food. I don't want to go to Vietnam and see like McDonald's everywhere. But we can have a trade between the two cultures that's amicable, that's limited, but that's friendly. And why should we deny them U.S. weapon systems when clearly they must want them? They've been partnering with the Australians and talking about trade deals with the United States too, because the Chinese keep ramming their fishing vessels. So yeah, we should partner with Vietnam more closely. We should treat all the states in East Asia, South Korea, Japan, the Philippines, Taiwan, Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, all of these states, we should have amicable relations with them all, and we should be funding development as well to try to spur on their economies even more, because then we won't need China anymore, because China's a nuclear power and really wants to rip apart the world. That's about all. Peace out.